Can you enjoy a prequel if you have a pretty good feeling that all the main characters in it probably won't have a happy ending or live? Guess we're going to find out. Netflix's and Jim Henson's The Dark Crystal, Age of Resistance, Season 1 Review. Hey Twisted people, it's your Twisted Girl here, and I am super duper excited to talk about The Dark Crystal, Age of Resistance, the prequel to the awesome Jim Henson movie, The Dark Crystal, the 1982 version. I am such a big fan of that movie, and I was super curious about how they were going to do this series that they chose to do as a prequel in the timeline of the original. And so this is the review of Season 1. It's spoiler-free for the majority of it. Now, if you've watched the season and you want to talk spoiler talk, make sure to stick around. Don't worry, I'll give a warning for those of you who don't want spoilers just yet. But make sure to stick around because I want to talk about theories and ship talk when it comes to The Dark Crystal Age of Resistance and some of the things I have in terms of the thoughts of the future of what's going to happen to these characters. So stick around for the spoiler talk if you want to do that. A prequel series to Jim Henson's The Dark Crystal of 1982. On the planet Thra, 3 Gelflings, Rian, Bria, and Deet, inspire a rebellion against the Skeksis when they discover a horrifying secret behind their power that threatens all of Thra. The Dark Crystal Age of Resistance is an epic, dark fantasy with great world building and beautiful storytelling. The centering of masterful puppetry puts to shame many of the recent adult fantasy movies that we've seen in recent years that rely way too heavily on soulless CGI. Puppetry and overall aesthetic. Oh my gosh, this looks so gorgeous. I mean, I've always been a big fan of Jim Henson's work, the Muppets, all of that. I've always been a big fan. Like I said, I still love, I actually watched it not too long ago, The Dark Crystal, the original 1982 version. I think that actually held up really well considering that it came out in the 1980s. And it doesn't look that dated. I mean, now in comparison to the new series, it does look a little dated just the way they had to film it. But it still stood the test of time, if you ask me, when it came to the script, when it came to the storytelling, and when it came to just how tangible those puppets are. And it's such an art form, right? And I think this film really just, it honors that artistry that Jim Henson and his company and his wife and all of them that they had when it came to doing that work and telling stories with puppetry where, sometimes that can be discounted as automatically kiddie and things of that nature. And I've never thought that, but I know some people are quick to dismiss it because it's not like actual people on screen or something like that. But I think what they did was that it was so well done, the aesthetic. And they did intermix some CGI in it, but it wasn't like, oh, it's all CGI. It was like moments that kind of, added onto it, but not so much that it was like, oh, now this is like a heavily CGI film. Not at all. It's very much 95% of it is the puppetry that really makes this film, and it's really pretty much makes up most of the film. And I just thought it worked so well, and it's so gorgeous to look at. Acting. Kudos to the voice actors and those who did the puppetry. Both of those came together to create such wonderful performances when it came to the characters in this film, with the emotions and the conveying that was going on in the voices to the movement of the puppets. It came together to create really compelling performances that, like I said, I have always loved The Dark Crystal and puppetry, and I've never thought that it made it so that because there weren't actual humans, that it was any less, able to convey real adult kind of emotions. And I think this series exemplified that for those who might be skeptical, because you still, in some of the very serious things that happen, and joy, of course, it's conveyed so well that you're not thinking, I'm watching puppets move. You're thinking, I'm watching these characters being, conveyed and these scenes being performed in such an engrossing way. And I don't think you would have been able to do that without the masterful use of movement and the use of, this is an all-star cast of voices, first and foremost, but they came to town and they showed up. No one phoned it in when it came to the voice acting, storytelling, and world building. So I think this was done really well, because if you are a fan of the original, you kind of know what is bound to happen. You don't know when it's going to happen. That's one of the things. You don't know when in the timeline this prequel series happens. So it could be 100 years from now. It could be 300 years from now. It could be 10 years from now. Who knows? But I think the way they built the world to be even more complex and layered than what we got in the original, the 1982 version, and that one was already vast, right? Like what they created, the mythos that was created with that world building, and I think they expanded it and gave it even more layers in this series, and probably because they had more time to, right? It's 10 episodes, so they had 10 hours to really convey a world, to really engross you in there, and they did it in a very just an awesome way. I think for those who are fans of like things like Game of Thrones or just dark fantasy type of shows that really care about mythos, really care about world building, you will love what they do with this show and how they build so much history when it comes to the different characters, the different clans, the different populations, and how they got to where they are. More so than just if you maybe if you were just even coming to it like not having watched the 1982 version, you can watch this film, and it might even be better for you to watch this film so you don't know what may happen later on. But even if you're new to it, it does a really great job of really creating a real world for you that has history, that has past, that has tradition in a very resonating way. Messaging. I'm not going to go too deep into this, but y'all know me when it comes to the deeper themes and messagings and digging deeper. I love doing that. And this series definitely, just like the original, had a very clear message of wanting to talk about corruption when it comes to power, talking about balance of forces, balance of power. And I think that's very poignant for today of 2019, and I think they did a fine job of really conveying that, and conveying that it's not all black and white, that it's not so easy, that if a character does something bad, they're not necessarily completely evil. Just like the original Dark Crystal, if people know that story, know as well when it comes to halves and wholes and what makes up a person, what makes up a being, I should say. And I think the series expanded on that and showed even more layers to it and really honed in on the idea of corruption and power and wanting to cast off the inevitable. And when it comes to the environment too, there's a little bit of an environmental thing going on there, just like I think in a way it was in the Dark Crystal, but of 1982, but it's even more pronounced now, and that's even more poignant now because of what we're going through with global warming. Okay, so you probably already realized that I absolutely loved this series, but I did find it's not really a con, it's more of a concern. And that goes with what I said in the beginning, which is how do you enjoy something knowing where it may go? Now, some people are like, well, I don't care, it's about the journey, it's awesome. But it's also kind of like it can be a little distracting because as you're watching this story unfold, you're like, how is this all connected? And how can I feel so endeared. So some of these characters that you're going to love, you're going to love some of these characters or a good amount of these characters so much. And to know what happens in the Dark Crystal 1982, or at least the premise of it, it's kind of like, man, how are you going to make me okay with where all of this may go? I'm not going to give spoilers if you haven't watched the Dark Crystal 1982. You should watch it. It's on Netflix as well. But yeah, it's hard because it's like, man, and it can be almost distracting because I'm someone who likes to try to figure stuff out all the times. So I'm watching it and I'm like, who's going to be connected to so-and-so and where are they going? Is this person going to die? I mean, do most of them die? You don't know, but it's also like you want to enjoy the prequel. You want to have hope, and I think they did a fine enough job when it comes to the idea of nothing ever truly ends. But it's very interesting that they picked a prequel and not a future sort of a deal, because, like I said, if you know the 1982 version, you know where it's going, or where it's potentially going, I guess. I don't know. I do think that's a little bit of a con. Not saying that I'm against this prequel. I love the premise. I love seeing Thra before things got crazy, but I do wonder how they're going to tie this in and not make it feel really contrived to the 1982 film. Lots of character deaths. Yeah, there's a war going on. So, yeah, this is not like happy-go-lucky PG. People die, and you see them die. And, yeah, that happens. Abuse. There's a lot of abuse that happens. Not a lot, but people are mistreated a lot. Yeah, certain species are very much mistreated. I mean, and it has a messaging behind it. It's not for, like, just gratuitously done, but it happens. So is the Dark Crystal Age of Resistance Twisted approved? Yeah, of course it's Twisted approved. You should be running, not walking, to watch this series. Oh my gosh, it is so epic. It is like, I'm not going to say it's people's answers to like Game of Thrones or anything like that. I'm just going to say for those who felt like when series like that ended that there would be such a huge gap left. Yeah, not happening. This series is just on point, and it's so engrossing, and it's such an awesome story, and they just do it in such a, I mean, my only other con would be that it's only 10 episodes and not 20, so hopefully we get another season, but yes, this is Twisted approved. Alright, so this is spoiler talk when it comes to season 1 of The Age of Resistance. So first and foremost, I ship Rian and Deet. Oh my gosh, they are so adorable. And I think they built it up enough that they made that's going to be his epic love. That's going to be Rian's epic love. And I think that's going to be Deet's, that love that they built, that they hinted at between them, is going to be Deet's chance to get rid of the darkening somehow. I think she needed a strong connection to somebody in order to be able to be redeemed, because I do see that happening. I don't see them allowing Deet to kind of have a sad ending like that in the whole scheme of things. So I think she needed to make that deep connection with Rian so that would happen for the two of them. So I ship that. I think Bria and Rekyr are going to end up together. I don't think that was a throwaway scene. If you remember, they had a really heavily like flirting scene. He gave her bones, she dug it. Even Rian was like, yo, he just gave you bones. And she was like, I like bones. And it was like, okay, these two are gonna be weird together. And he had a whole thing where he's like, until we meet again. And she seemed really taken by him. And I don't think they just threw that in for the heck of it. I think that was foreshadowing that they are going to meet again in season 2 probably and be together. Now, I know what a lot of people are wondering is whose kids are Kyra and Jen of the original Dark Crystal, right? Because the Dark Crystal 1982 happens, we don't know when, but we know it's in the future of this prequel series, right? So a lot of people are wondering, like, whose kids are these? Now, my theory is that I don't think the prequel takes place too far off from 1982. I think it may be like 20 years or maybe 40 or so, 20 to 40 years in the future, I think. I don't think it's that far ahead. I don't think we're going to see like a time jump of 300 years as though, you know, they've all been fighting for 300 years with the evil Skeksis and stuff like that. I think this was the beginning of going to that point of 1982, even if everyone dies except Jen and Kyra, right? So I think the other question is, whose kids are those, right? So I know when it comes to Jen, the boy, that people are pretty much, and I'm in agreement that he is definitely Rian's son or grandson, mainly because from what I remember of the 1982 one, which I know I just saw just like some months ago, he's the one that wields the shard, right, to end up doing the whole thing of the of getting the balance back together. And so we saw in the series that Rian, just like his father, was also the wielder of the sword that held the shard, right? So I feel like it has to go in kind of succession that the next person, the third person to probably be the person to do the shard would be Rian's ancestor or, you know, son or grandson. So I think that's a given. Now, the thing is, we know that Jen has the white in his hair, right? So his hair is not completely like Rian's, which makes me think that his mother is white haired, right? His mother was white haired. Now we know Deet and Bria both have white hair. Now, you may automatically go with it being Bria only because of the fact that it seemed like towards the end of season 1 that Deet went off. But the reason why I don't think Bria is the mother, or that she ended up having offspring with Rian, is because I think Kyra is somehow related to Bria. They look so much alike, and of course, it would be very weird if somehow she's related to, Kyra, and then she's also like the mother of Jen, because that would make them brother and sister. And although this has some Game of Thrones themes to it, I don't think they're going to go that route. So I don't think that's the case. I do think that Kyra is Bria's offspring. And I think it was actually Kyra that, I think it's all going to come back together, that Bria was the one that put Kyra into the tree trunk right before everything went crazy. Either way, it might also be Celadon, because she also had a redemption arc in this season 1. So she might end up, either way, Bria's related to Kyra somehow, which means she can't be the mother of Jen. She just can't be, because then they'd be related somehow, cousins or brother and sister. So I think that only leaves it being Rian and Deet's offspring with the white hair. And I don't think they're going to have it so Rian just randomly has a kid with some other person around. I don't think they would have built up Rian and Deet the way they did and have that kind of sad cliffhanger type ending if they didn't plan on going back around to it. And wouldn't that be kind of full circle for these 3 protagonists who became really so close when it comes to their hero's journey, that their offspring would end up together somehow? So I think that makes a lot of sense. And that's why I do think that the timeline for this isn't too far off. I think what we're going to see is Rian and all of them are going to be fighting for like maybe 20 years or so, and then their kids come about, and then, maybe something goes really wrong, and then their kids are the ones that eventually, rectify it all. And personally, I think they thought this through, right? I don't think they would have, honestly, there's been talks of sequels and prequels to The Dark Crystal for like a very long time, right? So I think when they came to doing this series, they thought it out. Just watching this series, this is such a well thought out story that I just find it hard to believe they haven't thought about how Kyra and Jen, the original characters from the 1982, connect to the 3 protagonists somehow. And I think that's the most streamlined way. And I don't think they're trying to throw us off. I think, they foreshadowed Bria with Wrecker, and I think they foreshadowed Rian with Deet. And I think their offsprings are going to be the ones that come together in the end. So I hope that's the way. I hope we don't get some type of weird love triangle between Rian, Bria, and Deet, because we don't need that. And I think Bria already pretty much is smitten with the other guy. So, and I think it'll also just look bad if Rian went from Myra, because let's be real, this whole season 1 probably took place over a couple of weeks to maybe a few months, and he had already fallen for Deet. So I think it would look bad if like he loses Deet and then he jumps to Bria too. It'd be like, okay, can we believe in any kind of love that he has with anybody? So yeah, I think they have to kind of cap it off at the second one with Deet. But either way, I'm super excited because I don't know where this is heading to. I know they kept doing the whole beginning, the end. It's all connected. It's one big circle. It's never, time's not linear when it comes to things. And I appreciated that because I felt like they had to kind of push that theme. Because like I said, we know by the 1982 version, it seems like Kyra and Jen are like the only 2 left. So it seems like everybody died, maybe. Or maybe everyone's in hiding, right? Maybe some people went underground and, they end up finding them or something like that. I don't know, but I'm just hoping that it doesn't make it so that, I hope there's some kind of hope and people can get returned back to life, because we saw that also in this season 1 as well, that people can come back. So maybe we'll see that too. I'm not sure, so that was my one concern. I'm like, man, I don't want to get super attached to all these characters knowing that everybody's just going to die, but maybe they'll do it in such a masterful way that we won't feel so devastated when or if it happens. All right, y'all. So that is my overall thoughts of the Dark Crystal Age of Resistance. Oh my gosh, I fell in love with this series. I'm probably going to rewatch, and I rarely rewatch series right after watching them, but I think I need to go back just to look at some of the visions and all the other stuff that happened to see if I missed anything, because this is such an epic series and story, and you should totally get into it. Thank you so much for sitting here and listening to me rant and rave and talk about how much I loved this series and this story, and I'm really excited to see where it's going to go. So let me know if you've watched it, if you fell in love with it the way I did. Let me know. Comment down below. Do you agree with my pros? Do you agree with my con? Are you concerned like I am how they're going to connect this to the original 1982? Let me know. Comment down below, and also be sure to subscribe so that you're the first to know when I post my videos. Thanks for watching, y'all.